You're listening to Estrogen Dropouts.
Welcome back to Estrogen Dropouts. I'm one of your hosts, Elizabeth.
And I'm your other host, Erin. And today we are joined by our guest, Darshana Avila. She is a certified somatic practitioner and a sexological bodyworker. I love that term. And she has appeared on Netflix's Sex, Love, and Goop. She's been quoted in The New Yorker, The Guardian, and on goop.com. And I know that she's going to have a lot to offer us today about our topic on how people-pleasing is ruining your relationship. So welcome, Darshana.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here talking about one of my favorite topics.
Awesome. So, Darshana, let's kick it off with how do you define people pleasing in the context of romantic and close relationships?
The most common way that it shows up is not actually knowing what you need, want, or like, and thus going along with your partner. And that can show up certainly in sex and physical intimacy. It can show up in acquiescing to all the big and small things, everything from schedules and where you're going to dinner and what date night looks like. And when being asked, how are you? What do you need? What do you want? Coming up short or giving the answers of like, yeah, it's great. I'm fine. Just the kind of go along to get along type of energy. A lot of us have a lot of experience with that. And those are the people that I help.
Yeah, it's interesting because here we are in midlife. I think this is when we really start examining this and being like, I hope that if we did have any young listeners, I would hope that they would start at a much younger age. But at midlife seems to be when we start to wake up and be like, wait a second,
Totally.
I'm going with the flow here, but it's time for me.
Yeah. And it's real. I think I was saying I love the name of your podcast because when the estrogen starts to drop out, so does the people pleasing. That there is a phenomenon that it's not just coincidence. It's not just, I think maybe this happens to some of us. It's a pretty consistent experience of this midlife hormonal shift that we phrase it however you want. We have fewer fucks to give. We're less concerned with keeping up appearances. We don't want to go along to get along. There is a biological imperative to those behaviors that our younger selves consciously or unconsciously were responding to. Here we are in midlife. We're not procreating. And in modernity, many of us are not dependent upon our partners in the ways that generations prior were. That's not everyone's reality, but it is applicable to more of us now than ever before. So what would be the reason, if you don't need the bills paid, if you don't need the babies made and taken care of, and again, I'm speaking about biological imperatives. So those hormones that are there, they do a ton of wonderful things for us at the age and stage of our developmental journey that they need to. At this stage of our journey, we have the opportunity to get really curious about who am I truly? What do I care about? What matters to me? What is the legacy I'm leaving in the world? And that might sound very lofty and big. And for some of us, that is the inquiry we get into. But for others, it could look like, well, what am I doing right here at home in my most intimate relationships? My relationship with my own body, for instance, that's a good jumping off point. That could be more self-honoring and more authentic. And that's how we find ourselves here having this conversation.
Yeah, I shared before we started to record that I am a reforming people pleaser. And I'm a 2 on the Enneagram. If you know anything about the Enneagram, I love to be helpful. It's just in my DNA. And I'm also have spent many years being a yoga teacher, a yoga therapist. I love all somatic work and what all that can do to help bring you back, to yourself. I started the podcast over 4 years ago because my youngest was leaving for college. All of a sudden, I'm going to become an empty nester. I've spent my entire, 20s, 30s, and 40s basically being the person that took care of everyone. And all of a sudden, I was like, who the hell am I? I thought that when I turned 40, that the people-pleasing part of me was starting to kind of a little bit. And then, as I, got into my 50s, it's really gone like to the complete, I'm not like antagonistic on purpose, but I just am less willing to go along to get along. But saying all of that, I wanted to ask you, are there certain attachment styles that are more commonly linked to people pleasers?
That's a really fair question to ask. And I'm gonna out myself by saying I have like a love-hate relationship with things like Enneagram and Myers-Briggs because I know that there's actually a lot of validity. But depending on how I take the Enneagram test, I'm either an 8 or a 2. I'm like, come on, a challenger and a helper? Ah,
Right.
but thank you
Totally
both
at odds with each other.
into my world. But the thing that I want to say and why I led that with that, attachment styles, most of us do have a baseline, a default style. So my default is anxious attachment, which is to say that I tend to get activated and want to reach and pursue, and I want to discuss things and process, and I'll go to bat and fight if I have to keep a connection alive. Whereas someone who is more avoidantly attached is likely to distance, to withdraw into themselves, to want to steer away from conflict, to shut things down and disconnect. And
Guilty.
that would be you. I kind of had a feeling.
Yeah, that's me.
And I mean, I don't want to be derivative and paint anyone with a single brush. Like, we are complex creatures. And the thing about attachment is, notice I started talking about what our baseline is. It will change. As we change, it will change in different relational contexts. So when I'm relating to someone who basically can out anxious my anxious, well, guess what? I become more avoidant. Part of this has to do with the relationships that we're in, where our attachment material might be getting triggered and activated. That being said, I do think people pleasing and anxiousness go together. Like, there is certainly enough anecdotal proof of this to have it seem true, that because our anxiety tends toward, okay, let me figure out how I keep the connection going. People pleasing fits really, really beautifully in that schema. It's like, well, if I can give you the thing that you want, if I can do for you and please you in the ways that I believe would allow connection to stay, then we'll be okay. And I won't have to feel anxious and everything gets to be yay. So imagine that scenario playing out over years upon years of lived experience. And imagine that playing out over a long-term intimate partnership wherein you've never really gotten to know who you are sexually. You've never explored your body, your turn on, your erotic expression, the ways that you want to be intimate as a giver, as a receiver, as a co-creator. Like, you've never, and I don't use words like always, never, often, but for many of us, it's true that we've never had the opportunity to know ourselves like that. So the people pleasing, I mean, it kind of can't help but take everything over in that context because there's really no option. You haven't given yourself one. You haven't gotten to know yourself. And when I say you, I want to be super, super clear. None of this is about like personal pathologizing. This is a deeply, deeply reinforced and entrenched cultural conditioning. Girls and women, anxious or avoidant, whatever our background, like, there's an expectation that we be pleasing, compliant. There is an expectation in a cis het dynamic that the man should be the initiator of intimacy and sexuality, that the woman should kind of go along. We understand ourselves as the object of the other person's pleasure as opposed to it being for us. So with all that cultural conditioning and us not having had an opportunity to really get to know ourselves, it's like I said, people pleasing is kind of then the default, but it does not have to stay that way. I don't want to get all doom and gloom here without at least putting a little ray of sunshine into the mix, that there are ways where we can course correct, and that this is a gift not just to ourselves, but to whoever we're relating with.
Well, so Elizabeth and I were speaking off camera before we started, and I was telling her today that there's a yoga teacher that I follow on Instagram. I've been following her for about 10 years. And one of the things that she was talking about recently is how when she does her practice every morning, that one of the things she tries to do, she tries to make herself as ugly as she can, like the most ugly faces. It's like
Do we get to do this?
and she said it's like, you're right. Women have been conditioned to always try to be attractive. You know, we shave our legs, we shave our underarms. We have been taught to put on makeup and fix our hair, you know, and men get to roll out of bed and like, you know, just like brush their teeth and go. And so she was just saying how, I know this seems weird, but I want to, you know, encourage you like to make yourself as ugly as you can. And she's beautiful. Like she has a beautiful soul as well, but she is a very beautiful person by conventional beauty standards. But she's like, I just try to basically undo some of that cultural, conditioning that I have been always taught to be with my blonde hair and my blue eyes and, with my lovely figure that I want to be like as ugly as I can be. And I actually really like that.
Yeah, I'm into it minus the use of the word ugly. And I don't know this
Well,
person, but I just want to like I mean it. Like everything that you just described is amazing. And what if we replace the word ugly for natural? What if it was just like, yeah, this is me rolling out of bed. This is me without the makeup, without the embellishments, if that's a way that we want to explore ourselves. Because on the one hand, I'm very much a woman who never wants to like shun another woman's choices of how she presents herself. And I mean that. Like we have enough that we're contending with. I'm not about to start policing anybody else's beauty standards. And this idea of like even beauty standards and ugliness, like it creates a certain like dichotomy and like we're pitting them against each other. I'm a big fan of like natural, authentic, like who am I? And I mean, I have a little mascara on my face right now, a little lip balm, and like this is me. These are my wrinkles, these are my spots, and I'm comfortable with that because this is like a full face of makeup for me with those two things on, right? So my version might be I don't put my mascara on. Someone who is used to a full face of makeup and perfectly coiffed hair, like maybe for them, it's like taking one step back from that to feel a little more of their own authenticity. I guess what I'm just trying to say here is like, it's like relative to what like how you present yourself, how you take care of yourself, and also how harsh and like rigid the standard is that you hold yourself to around that. I think ultimately what I'm hearing that this teacher has done and how it's impacted you is like the invitation to like take that standard away and just be like, yeah, this is me and my ugly face. Like I would say this is me and my not polished. I don't know. I'm big on words. So I hope that.
yeah. No, I get it. And I think she did even say like, it's just what ugly by traditional beauty standards would be is that, ugly is relative. And I don't like the term ugly because I don't think that there's an ugly person alive. I think everyone has beauty about them. But yeah, I do. I totally get what you're saying. And words do matter for sure.
Yeah. And something I'll add anecdotally, both from like personal and professional experience. One of the most powerful things that I've done to love and accept my body is to have and I'm going to call it the privilege, because I know that what I'm about to say is absolutely not everybody's experience, and many of you might not consider it a privilege. I have been around so many naked bodies of different shapes and sizes, different ages, different colors. I've seen sagging, jiggling, wriggling, toned, firm fit, hair, no hair, this color, this size, that size. Being around the spectrum of what human bodies look like, instead of just judging ourselves against what we see curated on social media or airbrushed in a magazine or whatever it is one of the most empowering experiences I've ever had. Looking at your own body, not with the critical judgment voice, but actually making it an intentional practice. And I guide clients through this. You mentioned my work on Sex, Love, and Goop, which is a Netflix show that anybody can go and watch, and I highly recommend it.
It's fantastic. I love it.
It's a great series. And I work with a couple, Camille and Chandra, over the course. We're in like 3 of the 6 episodes, so the story weaves. And myself and one of the other practitioners on the show, we both actually guided our clients through a practice of being in front of the mirror and really looking at our body, having them look at their bodies lovingly. What would that be like to look yourself in the mirror, look yourself in the eyes, as it were, and say like, this is my beautiful head of hair. This is my divine face. This is my perfect as it is chest. Insert your words here, but be intentional and look, fake it till you make it. I'm not asking you to feel these things if you don't genuinely feel them, but I am inviting that a practice of loving yourself as you are can be huge. And where I started was that recognizing that there are so many different bodies out in the world, so many different shapes and sizes, and that beauty can be found in all of them, as you said, Erin, and I agree. I've also had my hands on, I don't even know how many bodies. I started out as a yoga teacher a long time ago. So, I mean, there was all the bodies I had my hands on doing assists in class. There are hundreds of thousands of people who have laid naked on my table at this point for the kind of hands-on healing that I offer. And because I do erotic work, there's no modesty. I mean, unless you're chilly and you need it, like no one's underneath a blanket. You're just on display, not for me, for you. But I get to see these bodies and I mean it. Every body is beautiful. Every body has value. Every body has a capacity for pleasure. So this whole conversation we're having really brings us back to that. It's like, how do you find what is true for your body, yourself, your person, in the vein of how you want to present yourself outwardly, what brings you pleasure inwardly, how you want to do relationship. Like all of this is part of unwinding the people pleasing because it's all about getting in touch with what's real and true for you.
Yeah, that I mean, I would benefit greatly from something like that because I am a very modest and like reserved like person with my body. Like I don't even like to show cleavage. I don't mind if anybody else does. I just feel very uncomfortable. Like I don't want anyone looking at my boobs. Like it just makes me uncomfortable. But I know that for me, part of like taking my power back, I have a long way to go, but it was kind of like the conditioning of the people pleasing. And whenever my husband wants sexy time, then for me just to be agreeable, but I was carrying deep resentment for it. And so for a few, but I didn't say anything. I wasn't like, not tonight. I was just like, okay, well, he needs it because that's how we're raised. And
Yeah.
then, like, a few years ago, I was like, fuck this, because I'm secretly wanting to stab him. Like, I'm so ragey. And so I'm like, so I just said to him one day, I said, I'm done having sex with you until I want to, and I need you to stop initiating, and I will let you know when I want to, because you don't give me a chance to want it because you're always like on me and in my business. And I need you to give me some space and I will come to you when I want it. And just like, I know that seems so basic and silly. I just think we all
No.
start
Can I
where we
interrupt
are.
you? Can I please
Yeah.
interrupt you, Elizabeth? There is nothing basic or silly about the courage that it took to do that. Nothing. Because for every woman like you who perhaps has taken that step, there's probably 10 who haven't. And this is not to judge or shame them. It's a big deal. You just flew in the face of patriarchy. You just flew in the face of all the conditioning. And like everything I spoke about at the beginning, how this has been such an imperative that has a biological component, but then has become culture, right? Culture is
Yes.
the repetition of these are the roles we play. These are the parts that we're here for. The idea that our male partners want it and need it and we don't, okay, that is fucking false. Because I have
No, but like, I can't
100%
even think of a
a
time
partner who
that
wants
I've
more.
like thought to myself, do I need it? Like that's never been on my radar as, I'm 50 and I've literally never felt like, I mean, I'm sure I have. And I mean, now with the hormones, it's a little bit more challenging, but like, we just get so used to just being agreeable and doing what we're supposed to be
Yeah.
doing. And that we don't have a chance to ask ourselves and reflect, like, what do we want?
Sure. And chances are good, I imagine this applies to you and this applies to anyone in a similar scenario. If you have not been having sex that you want, if you have not been having sex on a schedule that actually works for you, if you have not been having sex for yourself, of course you're going to think that you don't need it, that you don't want it, because you haven't had sex worth having. And this is true for a lot of my clients, that the story goes like, oh, well, I could take it or leave it. It's not a big deal. We've been together forever. We raised the kids. Like sex is just not important. Like this, spiel goes on and on and on and on. But when we dig beneath that and the opportunity presents itself to safely and slowly explore what physical intimacy and touch and sensuality, what affection and erotic expression can look like on your terms, and when the pleasure that you're experiencing is giving to you instead of taking from you, which is
That's
how
what you,
so many of us
yes.
feel. And I imagine what you
Yeah.
described about your husband not giving you, like, you don't have room for your own desire to surface because he's always saying, gimme, gimme, gimme. Right. And that's such a common scenario. It breaks my heart how common it is. And we don't have to stay in that pattern. What you did was a huge pattern interrupt. I'm curious to hear how it's going.
Yeah, no, it got like that was a few years ago and like things are much better now and he's very respectful and he was thankfully very responsive and he was like he had no idea I was like ragey. So he was like I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Like, I'm like, "Hey, I'm down. Are you?" And you're just like, "Okay," you know? And so he's like, "I
Right.
had no idea." And he's like, "What can I do?" Because he's like, "I want you to want it," you know? And
Yeah.
so, anyway, I was very nervous to have that conversation, and it
I
took
bet.
many years. But I will say, if you are on the fence having it, I think you go ahead and have it. Like, do you have any tips for that if women are like wanting to say something but don't know where to start or how to open that dialogue?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also just want to say in reflection, like what you described about how your husband received you, like how beautiful and wonderful. That's also not as rare as it might seem to be on the surface for folks listening. Because what happens is I love men. Okay. None of this is a man bashing thing. All of us, all people of all sexes and all genders are being just stifled under our cultural norms. So we all then benefit when we shift this stuff up. So your husband saying to you, like, I had no idea, like, that was probably a really genuine thing on his part. How would he know? He was acting the role that he was told to act. I'm the man. I'm supposed to follow my instincts. I initiate sex. My wife is here for that. That's the script he was handed, just like you were handed the, okay, I'm supposed to give him this when he wants it. Who cares about me script? It's shit. So when he realizes, wait a second, I'm not actually, and this might not have been the words, but it is what's going on. What he realized when you gained the courage to talk to him was that you guys have not been having consensual sex. I want to like pause around that one for dramatic effect with intention. It is not consensual. Now, the biggest consent violation was you with you, right? And this is where we can also build up a lot of a sense of self-betrayal and self-abandonment by perpetuating these people-pleasing behaviors because we are saying yes to something we are a no to. That's what I mean when I say
Yeah,
it's
so we're
not
failing ourselves.
exactly.
Yeah.
And thus our partners are believing they're taking us at our word. We're saying yes. So it's not like rapey, like it's not that, but for consent to truly be established in an intimate context, both people need to be enthusiastically co-signing for what's going to go on. We both need to feel equally empowered to call a pause or a stop or a pivot anytime we need to, which it doesn't sound like you did for a very long time, right? And I'm using you as an example of which so many are in this experience, right? And so it's not truly consensual. And our partners are loving partners who are doing their best, just as we're doing our best, and we're following these shitty scripts we were all handed. They would far rather have sex with us when we are excited about it. They would far rather have sex that we want to be having. But if we're just faking it, which is what people pleasing is, how are they going to know? And it's not to say partners are blameless, that like we like this, because any more than it is to blame us. I just want to illustrate how this dynamic can just keep growing and growing over time. And what ends up happening when you have the hard and honest conversation is, well, on the other side of that, you get to bring curiosity and creativity into the mix. You get to say, ooh, I wonder now that we're being honest, what are we going to co-create together? How do we want to be sexual together? What's available to us? So that's that piece. You asked how somebody could, any tips that I might have for someone who wants to bring this to their partner. So a few things are, you don't talk about this while you're having sex. This is a big conversation. And so it needs to happen in moment of relative neutrality. Neutrality meaning nobody's like tired, hungry, distracted, like if, whatever's going on, like you want to be present. You want to have mutual buy-in. So this is ideally not the thing that you just like spew out of your mouth in a moment of dysregulation, but instead you might want to say, hey, love, hey, babe, like I've been having some realizations and some thoughts related to our sexual dynamic, and I really want to sit down and have a focused conversation with you because this is so important to me that we be good in this area. Are you up for that? Maybe they say yes, and it is a mutually good moment. Maybe it's not, and you put a date on the calendar for the next day or later or in a week or what have you. And look, that moment may not be the perfect moment either. Don't keep pushing it off, but it really matters that both parties show up available and that there be buy-in for this conversation. And it's not to make it all like, oh my God, this heavy, scary thing is going to happen. You may feel like that, but it's really more to say, you matter to me. Our relationship matters to me. This is important to me. You don't want to skip past that detail. This isn't just some like, yeah, I could take it or leave it if we have this conversation. This matters to you. So you want to make sure it happens. You just want to do it in a moment when you're both available. And then leading with vulnerability, saying things like, this feels scary to do. I'm nervous. I don't know how to say this perfectly. I do know that I'm having feelings, I'm having thoughts, I'm aware of things that I haven't been communicating, and I'm afraid that you might get your feelings hurt. Like, speak the truth. Just open with that, not in an attacking way, not in an apologizing way, just to like, yeah, here's me having my human experience, and this is me growing. And I think it's really important to, as long as this is your truth, to center what you're sharing in that mutuality of care. I'm telling you this because I love you. I love us. I actually would like to figure out what's available to us that maybe we had no idea existed. I'm telling you this not because I just want to make you feel like a horrible person or because I've been deliberately lying, but because I'm catching up to myself as I'm changing, as I'm evolving. And I really hope that our relationship can evolve too in ways that work for both of us. The thing that is always available when we're bringing our vulnerability and when we're bringing our truth is that what's available is the permission we extend to the other person through our modeling, through the example of our sharing, also opens the door for them to become more honest. And you have no idea what people pleasing your partner may have been doing, what following the script he or she has been doing despite not really wanting to, that maybe now they get to bring some things out into the light of day and you two get to collaborate together. So I feel like I could be going on about this for like 6 more hours without pausing. I want to put a pause.
Well, I think it's important, like you were saying, is like making sure that you're saying like it with I statements.
Yeah.
So like I feel this way, or because I think oftentimes when we get into conversations, we often want to say you, we
Yes.
want to kind of point the finger, we want to, so it's definitely taking ownership of what I'm experiencing and letting it come out in a non-confrontational, non-judgmental, non-finger pointing way of saying, making sure that you're saying it from a perspective of, I feel this way. Because I think, we often want, like Elizabeth was saying, she felt like first she felt a duty to do, her duty. And then she also felt the need to then like swallow down saying no because we want to be people pleasers. And I wanted to ask you about that because we've talked a lot about the conditioning. And I grew up in a very religious household. I'm in the South. So, I can just remember even from being a little girl that always knowing that sex was bad and girls don't want sex and girls that want sex are sluts and, like fast
And
girls.
I was not raised in a religious household, and I was also raised with that. And nor was my mom raised in a religious household, and she was raised with those beliefs too. So I think like it's just a
Which
thing.
shows us that something that did originate from religious conservatism, and in some families like yours, Erin, continues to be, in your case, Elizabeth, it doesn't have to be religion to have that kind of puritanical, sex negative, very shaming energy. Like I love to play with words. And so my acronym for slut is sexually liberated, unapologetically truthful.
Like that.
Like, what if we all got to be that? Nowhere in there does it say how much sex you have to have, what kind of sex you have to have. It simply says you choose to liberate yourself around your sex. So you make space for who you are, sexually speaking, and unapologetically truthful. You represent yourself honestly. You don't say yes when you mean a no. You learn how to identify and advocate for your needs, desires, and boundaries. Here's the thing. None of this is rocket science. I mean, not even by a long shot. This is completely available to children, to adolescents, to at every developmental age and stage of life. The lessons that I'm speaking of here, the underlying tenets can be taught and can be embodied. We just exist in a culture where that hasn't been happening. So here we are in our middle years. Here we are with our hormones shifting. And on the one hand, it's kind of like amazing because if you are a perimenopausal or menopausal woman in relationship with a man, there has never been a time when the topics of our hormone shifting has been more popular than now. So chances are good your partner's not going to be completely shocked that part of your midlife experience is you want to have a conversation about how your sex life could change. That's a good thing, in my opinion. I hate the memification of our experience. That version of things can get really like, ugh, this is so not cool. But the positive is that we have far more discourse and far more resources available to us. Conversations about these topics are becoming more normalized. You still have to bring your discernment to it. You still have to know where you're getting your information from, and you still have to do the just basic good humaning things of like what we're speaking of here. Check in with your partner, make sure they're available, make sure you both feel safe and present and resourced, mutual vulnerability, mutual care. I statements, which is to say, none of how you feel has to be a criticism of your partner. And a lot of people fear that. You know, with intimacy, we fear that if I tell you I need or want something different than what's happening, or if I say I've longed for a thing that you're not doing or equipped to do, that you're going to feel wronged and wrong and disappointed, and I'm going to lose your love. None of this has to be that. You could actually, if it's your truth, say, I know you really love me. I know that as far as you are concerned, like our sex life has been pretty healthy, or at least that's how it appears to me. You know, careful about the whole making an assumption thing. And I want to tell you that as I'm going through these changes within myself, I'm noticing where I haven't been fully honest. I'm noticing where I have gone along with things that I wasn't really a yes to. I'm noticing this fantasy that's been hanging out for years upon years actually really wants to be fulfilled, and I've never had the courage to talk about it before. There's so many different things that you might want to share. When you share from your vulnerable truth, you give your partner an opportunity to meet you in that. And that's where the growth happens. That's where true intimacy deepens. And in the best case scenario, you get a lot more pleasure, loves. You actually get to learn what feels good to your body and how you want to share yourself and what really turns you on. And sex doesn't have to be a chore, but it can become a joyful and creative act of play and pleasure, which is what it's made for.
Yeah. And it helps you live longer.
It's great for longevity.
Yes, it's like one of the best things for anti-aging. Well, I wanted to also ask you a little bit off topic from the people pleasing, but about Elizabeth was talking about when you were talking about the body, the shame. I'm actually I'm immodest, like to a point where I will get naked in front of anybody. I don't care. Like, I don't think of being naked as sexual though. Like to me, it's just part of life. I mean, we're all naked under our clothes. Like there's nothing that you have that I don't have, that I haven't seen, that, you know, like to me, it's just not a big deal. And sometimes it can make people uncomfortable. Like, I mean, if I've traveled with girlfriends who are very modest,
You've
and
never gotten naked in front of me. You've never gotten naked in front of me.
She has a sense of how you'd react.
Okay, next time we are together, I will get totally butt naked in front of you.
I want to insert in this, my lifelong bestie, whose name is Erin, is an Elizabeth.
Is she? Okay.
She's an Elizabeth. And I say that with so much love. And I am an Erin and you of like, I'm naked in front of everybody. I don't care. And so we've known each other for going on 30 years now, been like this. The only time I have ever seen that woman's breasts is when she had her reconstructive surgery on the other side of cancer. She once and once only let me see her new boobs. It's like, you know, and nobody's wrong here.
Right.
Nobody's
But
wrong.
I think that sometimes that that when we carry shame, or we think of being naked, I do think it has, I don't think it's necessarily right or wrong, but it has an effect then on being able to maybe sometimes like be an advocate for your own pleasure. Because I feel like if you can't just embrace your own nakedness, it's like hard for you to maybe be willing to have those conversations and be an advocate. So is there
Agree.
anything that when you work with clients who have that type of like, I don't want anybody to see me naked, like what are some things that you do that help people to get
Well,
past those?
I love this question because you're 100% right that there's definitely correlation there. It may not be everyone's experience, but yeah, there's a lot of correlation there. And in the same way that when somebody comes to work with me, they're not getting naked in session 1, session 2, probably not even session 3, maybe session 3, right? Like I don't do one-offs. I do journeys. I am here to help people transform. I am here to help people heal their trauma and to embody their authentic erotic expression. That does not happen quickly. So in the same way that what I do with my clients is we begin by really taking good care of our relational field, building rapport and trust and safety. We focus a lot on nervous system tending initially. So it's how do you get yourself to be present in your body, to feel relaxed enough to be receptive, because those things do go together. You cannot be receptive if you are not relaxed. So if you're buttoned up and tense and tight, of course you're not going to want to allow in touch, attention, someone's gaze, affection, stimulation. So as I take my clients through this journey, we all have the same opportunity in relationship with ourselves and relationship with our partners. Like, I guess to make it very simple, it's don't rush. Have a clear sense of the growth that you want. So if what you want is to see, maybe I could feel a little more relaxed in my body. Maybe I could take on a practice of being more self-loving, more self-affirming. Maybe I might find out that there's something about my sexuality that could make it more exciting to me. So let's say those are your goals, those are your intentions, right? If that's what you want, we're not just rushing toward that. We're slowly building ourselves toward that, step by step. So you might begin with removing a piece of clothing in front of the mirror and looking at your collarbones, looking at a part of your body, touching a part of your body that you don't often pay much attention to. Does not have to be your breasts, does not have to be your genitals, does not have to be your ass as the first stop, and then maybe it's another piece. And notice how you feel. Like slow down, pause, be aware of your emotions, be aware of your sensations. If they're getting super, super, super activated, put the clothing back on. I'm going to make another reference to the Netflix show. I think, this is my opinion. There is a scene when I'm working with Camille and Chandra where the two of them were exploring different positions, different sex toys, different ways that they can add some new dimension into their sexuality. And Camille, whose trauma and whose wounding is very, very much of the sort that we're discussing here. She's a consummate people pleaser with that strong acculturation to I'm supposed to be pretty and I'm supposed to say yes and it's supposed to look good and who cares if I like it or not. And I noticed her freezing. I noticed the dissociation happening while I was working with her. And I said, do you want to put your clothes back on? And she did. And then you see her crying in my arms. Now you're seeing the edited versions of a much more fully fleshed out arc. But what we did was we actually took a step back. We de-escalated because she had escalated to a point that was not actually sustainable for her. We all get to do these same things for ourselves. What I'm speaking about in the world of somatics, which if that word is not familiar to people, somatics is of the body, body-based wisdom, body-based healing. In somatics, we have another term that we use called titration. And what that means is we go toward the growth edge, right? Like it's like, okay, I'm going to step toward that place where it feels a little edgy, where I'm beyond my comfort zone. I'm going to hang out there for a moment. And then I'm going to come back to where it's safe. And then the next time I go to my edge, maybe I stay a second longer. Maybe that edge pushes out a teeny bit further. I still come back to the safe place. And then I do it again. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. Over time of titrated growth, that capacity does expand. If our growth edge, just to put it in like linear terms, if our growth edge was 6 inches in front of us, over time, it's going to be 6.5 and 7 and 7.5 and 8 and so on down the line, because we grow our capacity, our comfort, our relaxation, our ability to allow new parts of ourselves come online. So whatever you might choose to explore within for yourself, and I also should say, I'd be remiss not to, you don't have to do this alone. I'm here. There are coaches, there are guides, there are teachers. You don't actually have to do this without support and love and care and a safe container. But if you are, and even so you know what to look for in a container, this kind of titrated approach, moving at the pace of presence, allowing yourself to grow incrementally, that's what's going to create sustainable change. That's what's going to bring about satisfaction. Anything else is likely to just like blow your circuits. And then what? You're back even further than, square one. So I hope that felt helpful.
I'm writing it down actually. And I learned some of that in my yoga therapy training, but moving at the pace of presence, that's like, I think, a great summation of saying, you only move forward if you can stay present. Because once you start spiraling or getting activated, you're not present any longer.
So, yeah, it's a phrase I use a lot. I mean, it's kind of the baseline of the space that I hold for people. Like, we meet in presence and we move at the pace of presence. There's an agenda in that sense. There's an intention. So like I said, start with identifying your intentions and your desires. You got to know where you would like to grow, but don't have a rigid agenda about how you think you're going to get there by following step A, B, C, D on this time frame. No. There's got to be more spaciousness than that to allow. Really, this word allow comes up so often. It's a being available to what is. It's essential for a practice of presence.
Yeah. And then sometimes I think it has to start like, or I mean, there's no rules, but I think for some people like me, taking back my power needed to start in my daily life before I was ready to tackle the bedroom. Like, I remember I had like a breakdown whenever my husband, we're supposed to go to his family's for 4th of July. And then we ended up canceling. I was the one that really kind of didn't want to go because it wasn't working out with the schedules. We had a kid coming home from college and it was just like kind of a crazy time. But I know he loves the 4th of July. It is his favorite thing to put off the fireworks and do all of this stuff. And I was like, okay, like you said, we're not going to go, but now I feel like we should go. We have to go because I'm like people pleasing and because I'm like worried about him and worried about his family being offended, that I'm backing out, even though logistically, that's the only reason I didn't want to go. It was not working for our family. And then I was like, no, we have to go. We have to go. And he's like, I don't want to go. And he's like, I'm like, you're going to regret it if we don't go. And I'm like, because I know this is your favorite holiday and stuff. And he's like, hear me, I don't do what I don't want to do. And he's like, I'm not going to do something to please someone else when I don't want to do it. And he's like, I know that in the past this has been but you're right. Logistically, it is not working. And in that moment, my head like basically exploded because I was like, he's literally giving me permission to also do what I want to do.
Bingo.
Because he's doing it. And so it's like, I was like going to default like, oh no, we'll just cram it in and stress ourselves out and go just so other people are happy. And he was like, no. And then he's like, I don't do anything I don't want to do. And there are times when I do things I don't want to do, but I'm conscious of it and I'm making the conscious decision to do it. Therefore, I'm letting it go that I don't want to do it. You know what I mean? Because I've chosen to take advantage of it. So then I am not like a victim and a passive person in my life. And in that moment, I was like, fuck this. Like, I've literally been like, what have I been doing to myself? It's just like with women, we are taught so often just to push and what does everybody else want? What's to keep the norm? Like, so sometimes I think it needs to start and men are not raised like that. They are raised to do what they want and everyone else will be fine and figure it out. And so then I like literally crashed out. I was like crying. I was like, because I was like, oh my God, he's been saying this to me for years. I do what I want. And then I just thought it was something he said passively. And in that moment, I like heard him, no, he needs this. And then I was like, oh my God, I was crying for myself because I was like, all of these years, I haven't been doing exactly what I want because I've been doing shit for you. I think you know what I mean? But if he knew that I was really bothering me, he probably wouldn't have wanted me to do it. But, it's like this mind fuck that we just like screw with ourselves. Anyway, that was like the big
Yeah.
turning point for me to be
And
like,
that's such a like powerful story right there. You just encapsulated so many of the things we talked about, including the permission giving aspect, right? Him being authentic in that moment, him sharing his truth turned into this watershed for you of recognition of how all the ways you haven't been doing this. And it opened up a whole new field of possibility for you personally, for the two of you as a couple. That's huge.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to ask you, Darshana, if someone was only going to remember one thing from listening to us today about people pleasing in relationships, what would it be?
Ooh, great question. Okay, so here's what I want you to remember. This is something you learned to do and be. So you can unlearn it. That's really the mic drop moment. Like you can unlearn this. It is changeable. You can evolve. And having that as a fact that you can organize around, that you can like point your compass full of hope toward, like that's everything. Like you have to know that you don't have to keep doing it the way you've always done it, that change and growth are actually available for you. And you can join us, recovering people pleasers. Definitely, you can come into my world. I do a ton of work around this with the people that I support. And like I said earlier, you don't have to go it alone.
So how
You
do
deserve
people
the
get in touch with
guidance.
you? Do they do this virtual? Do you work virtually for people that are not in California? Or tell us how you
So
find you and then how would someone work with you?
yes, I'm very findable. My website's a great place to start, which is my name, Darshana Avila, and I'm sure y'all will have all the links. I have a podcast, Deeper with Darshana. I have a YouTube channel. I have a free online community. I have a couple of courses that you could buy and have forever on demand. And if you want to work with me directly, the beautiful thing is many of my clients do not live in California. Many of my clients come and do a multi-day immersion with me. I've had people from all over the globe, all across the US. I sometimes travel to people. So if you're really, really wanting what I've got to offer, then geography is not the only barrier to that. And I have other ways that you can lean in. And you can learn about, I'm sure by the time this comes out, I'm about to release a quiz that is all about these archetypes of protection, of which people pleasing is one. And it's a great way to gain insight into like more of the like, oh, what is this patterning that I've been playing out? And to have practical guidance around how you can unwind it. So come hang out with me. Get onto my email list, find me on Instagram, wherever it is that you hang out. And I'd love to help you unwind your people pleasing.
Yeah, I will drop all of this in the show notes for people that are listening so they don't have to worry about trying to write it down or remember it. And I just wanted to make a really quick comment that when you said that you learned it and you can unlearn it, because if you think about it, babies are definitely not born as people pleasers. They're the most demanding little things ever, right?
Unapologetically.
Yeah. Well, we are so grateful to have you with us today and sharing all of your wisdom. And I definitely am going to be going and checking out your website. If you haven't followed the podcast yet, we would love to have you hit that button so that you can stay in the loop whenever we release a new episode each week.
And follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. You can watch the whole thing. And we will see you next Wednesday. Have a great day. Bye, guys.
This has been a production of Estrogen Dropouts, LLC.